네, 코리안 마이스 엑스포 2020 컨퍼런스의 두 번째 세션을 시작하도록
Welcome to the
하겠습니다.
second session
아마
of Korea
온라인으로
Mice
참여하시는
Expo
분들 중에는
2020.
방금
Those of you
들어오신
who are
분들도
just
계실 것
joining us
같은데요.
online,
다시 한번 인사드리겠습니다.
I would like to introduce
저는
myself
진행을
again.
맡은
I'm the
이주희입니다.
MC for this event.
반갑습니다.
I'm Joo-hee Lee.
네,
Very nice
오늘부터
to meet you
이틀간
today.
열리는
Now, this
컨퍼런스는
two-day
코로나19
conference
이후
is being
마이스
held
산업의
under the theme,
전망이라는
the
주제로
outlook for the
진행이 되고
mice industry in
있습니다.
the
앞서 첫
post-COVID-19
번째
era. In the first
세션에서는
session, we've
글로벌
just
플랫폼
heard from
기업인
the global
구글과
platform
또
company, Google and
마이크로소프트에서 트래블
Microsoft. We
부문을
heard from the
총괄하고
heads of
계시는
travel
분들의 이야기를 들어봤습니다.
at those companies
오늘 두
for their
번째
stories. And in
세션에서는
the second
마이스
session,
산업의 도전과
we're going to
변화를
be talking
만드는
about the
미팅
technologies for
테크놀로지라는
meetings,
제목으로
triggering changes in
마이스
mice industry.
테크놀로지에 관한 이야기를
We'll be learning a
나눠볼까
lot
합니다.
about mice
그러면
technologies
이번
today.
세션의 좌장님을
Now I'm going to
소개해드리도록
introduce to you
하겠습니다.
the moderator of this
좌장이신
session.
이창현
The session is
전시
Mr.
컨벤션
Lee
경영연구소
Changhyun, who's the director and
소장님께서는
CEO of Exhibition
중앙정부와
and
또
Convention
지자체 마이스
Institute.
산업
Has
정책
helped the
수립은
central and
물론
local governments
컨벤션 센터
establish
건립,
mice industry
국제회의
policies,
유치
and in the
전략
area of
수립,
convention center
전시회
establishment,
국제화
conference
전략
hosting
수립 등
strategies, and
다양한
exhibition
마이스
globalization
전반의 연구를
strategies.
진행해
Has
오셨으며
conducted
특히
extensive
최근에는
research,
미팅
and also
테크놀로지
recently
기술 동향
it's been
및
leading a
수요
research
연구
project
프로젝트를
on meeting
수행하고
technology
계십니다.
trends
네, 그러면
as well as
여러분
demands.
이창현
Please
경영연구소
welcome the
소장님을 큰
director
박수로
of
맞이해 주시기
ECI,
바랍니다.
Changhyun Lee, with a big round of applause.
네, 안녕하십니까.
Hello.
소개받은
As
이창현.
was introduced, I'm Lee Changhyun from ECI.
오늘 이렇게 뜻깊은 자리에
I'm very honored to be invited to this event as a moderator.
사실 올 한 해는
I thank the organizer for this opportunity. I believe that this year has been a struggling, challenging year for the mice industry. We've had to go through so much changes due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
변화가 발생을 하고 있는데요.
Quite an unprecedented year for the mice industry, indeed.
무엇보다 테크놀로지
And especially, there has been an increasing awareness about the use of technologies, especially at a time where we cannot have these offline events. We're still able to have the hybrid form of events utilizing digital technologies. Now the mice industry is going into the low growth era, and I believe that the major driving engine will be led by digital technologies. So we're going to look at these major drivers behind the changes in the mice industry, the meeting technologies. So how is the mice industry making use of the meeting technology so that they can identify a new engine of growth? We have 3 speakers and 1 panelist sitting next to me. First, presentation is going to be provided by Bang Hee-ran, who's a lead of travel and transportation at Amazon Web Service Korea. Bang Hee-ran is the lead of travel and transportation at AWS Korea for large carriers and low-cost carriers. Amazon delivers cloud platform services utilizing fourth industrial revolution technologies such as AI and big data so that companies can realize greater value. Now the speaker will talk about the never normal digital first strategies. With that, I would like to invite lead Bang Hee-ran to the podium. Big round of applause is in order. Thank you.
안녕하세요.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.
엔터프라이즈 기업을 대상으로
I work at
디지털
Amazon Web
트랜스포메이션
Services,
전이를
and
도와드리고
we
있는
provide
방이라고
services
합니다.
for
요즘
different
우리는
corporates
한
to
번도
journey through
경험해보지 못한
digital
이
transformation.
팬데믹 상황을
Right
겪고
now, we
있는데요.
are
저도
going
이렇게
through a
마스크를 쓰고
pandemic
발표하는 게
situation,
처음이라
which is
굉장히
something
좀
that we've never really
어색합니다.
experienced before.
모든
I
것이
find it
참
very
빠르게
uncomfortable
변하고
having to
있죠.
give my
우리가
presentation wearing
일하는
a face
방식,
mask.
즐기는 방식,
Things are
살아가는
changing
방식,
so rapidly,
그리고
the way that we enjoy
상품하고
things, the way
서비스를
that we work, the way that we
제공받는
live, and even the
방식까지.
way where we
그래서 이 네번
purchase
노말은
and
끊임없는
have access
변화를
to
얘기하고
products and
있습니다.
services, which is
이런
why there's all
변화들은
these
아주 다양한 곳에서도
never-ending
볼 수 있는데요.
changes.
이거는
So
기술의
we are
변화로도
living in a
볼 수가
never
있습니다.
normal situation,
사실
and this is something that we're seeing
경제적인
in technology
관점이나
as well.
비즈니스적인 관점에서 볼 때 이런
From the point of view of
변화들이 새로운
business or
기회를
from the economy,
만듭니다.
I think
그래서
that
오늘 이
these new changes
시간에는
will
그
always create
변화의
new
중심이
opportunities.
되고 있는
So today I want to
디지털
talk
우선
about
전략과
the
다른
digital
기업들이
strategies
어떻게
that
그런
are the
디지털
center of
사례들을
these
적용하고
digital
있는지
transformations
한번
and how other
살펴보도록 하겠습니다.
companies are applying these
오늘
digital
다룰 주제는
transformations
이렇게
in in their use
네
cases.
가지입니다.
I'm going to go
내용은
through
사실
these
그렇게 어렵지
4
않으니
items on the
편하게
agenda.
들어주시면
This
좋을
is
것
not very
같습니다.
challenging, so
우선
I hope that you can sit
오버뷰하고
back
트렌드를
and
잠깐 살펴보겠는데요.
listen to my
이
presentation in a
글로벌
comfortable
여행
manner.
관광
I'd like to
산업과
first
이
look at the
마이스
industry
산업의
overview
정의를
and
잠시
trends.
살펴보면
But if we look at
마이스
the
산업은
definition of
큰
the global
범주에서는
travel and tourism
여행
industry and the
관광
MICE
산업에
industry,
포함은 되어
the MICE
있지만
industry
하지만 그 전체
folds
시장의 약
into the
8%
umbrella
정도를
category
차지하고
of
있는
travel and
굉장히
tourism,
니치
but
시장입니다.
they only take up
그래서
about
오늘
8% of the
여기
total
오신
market, so it's a very
분들은
niche
이뿐만
category.
아니라 전체적인 큰 범주에서 여행 관광 산업이
You are here
다른 기업들이 어떻게 이
here,
네버 노말
from the
시대를
MICE
좀
industry, but I think that we can all
대응하고
benefit
있으며
from learning
어떤
about
디지털
the
트랜스포메이션
greater
전략을
travel and
가지고
tourism
있는지 좀
industry,
아이디어를
what
가지고 이
their
마이스
digital
산업에 적용을 해보시면
transformation and digital
굉장히 큰
strategies
도움이
are, and I think that
되실
that
것
will be helpful
같습니다.
for you in
또
better
먼저
understanding
트래블
your future
하스피리티
in the
산업을
MICE
잠깐
industry. So
살펴보면요.
first in travel and
글로벌
hospitality,
경제에서 8조 8천억
they
달러의
contribute
기여를
about
하는
$8.8
산업입니다.
trillion
글로벌
to the global
부문에서도
economy.
두 번째로
So
빠르게
this is also the
성장하는
second
산업이고요.
fastest growing
근데 물론
industry in
이거는
the world.
코비드-19
But of
이전에
course, this is pre-COVID. These statistics are all from pre-COVID. But as you can see, this is a very big industry. In fact, 1 out of every 10 person in the world is employed in this sector. So it's a very globally big sector, which is why AWS is also trying to transform the travel or air travel, hotel accommodations, travel services. Even within AWS, this is a very important organization. And if you take a close look at this, we see digital transformation, digitalization, digital strategies. These sectors can all really benefit from these transformations. These are some of our corporate partners that we are working together on their digital transformation journey in Korea. There's Korean Air, or Singapore Airlines, Qantas. These are some of the national airlines, but you can also see Ryanair, AirAsia. These are low-cost carriers. They are also implementing digital-first strategies. In hotel and accommodations, you would see traditional hotel chains like Hyatt, but you also see other startup companies like Yanolja or Airbnb. They are also going through digital transformation. Booking.com and Skyscanners, these global OTAs are also going through digital transformation. Now I'd like to switch gears and talk about business in a never normal era. What's the next step for us in a COVID-19 era? Recently, we partnered with Skift. We entered into an alliance to do a survey to about 1,000 air travel and accommodations companies around the world. And we issued a survey. We wanted to see how they're responding to COVID-19. And 70% of the respondents said that digital transformation is the most important or somewhat most important element to respond to COVID-19. So this is a very good testament in seeing how important digital transformation is in COVID-19. 2020 and 2021, if we asked organizations what is their highest priority, over 60% or 61% of companies said that in this year and next year, the most important task for them is to try to provide high level, high quality of customer experience. So this is very obvious, but these corporations still place great value on high quality customer experiences. And we also had the opportunity to interview Vice President Changhyun of Korean Air. They said that digitalization is the foremost priority for us after safety, that the experience that customers have in flight should be better than the experiences that they have in the ground. Unless that is so, they cannot have their business. I thought that was very inspirational. What should we do to prepare for the never normal era? There's so much uncertainty, which means that customer needs are ever changing. In fact, in the online space, we're seeing very rapid changes. And there's a lot of virtual work, virtual spaces, and remote work. So it's very important to capture that level of productivity while still working remotely. Organizations are trying to respond to these very rapid changes, which means it's very important for corporations to be very agile. which
혁신
means
문화를 좀 바탕으로
that
기존에 갖고 계시던 이제
corporations
사업 메커니즘을 좀 과감하게
have
깨셔야
to
되고요.
really
고객을
undergo
중심으로
rapid
한
transformation
조직의
with the existing
민첩성을
structures that they
확보하고
have and
디지털
try to be very
트랜스포메이션에
agile as an
집중을 하셔야
organization and
됩니다.
focus on digital transformation.
그래서 이 네버노멀 시대의 디지털
In the
인게이지먼트
never normal
요구가
era,
굉장히
the
많이
demand for digital
늘어났죠.
engagement
근데
is very
저희 사실
high.
아마존 웹 서비스에서도
At
다양한
Amazon
클라우드
Web
서비스를
Services,
제공을 하고
we
있는데요.
provide many different kinds of
특히
cloud
최근에는
services. As you know,
정규 모바일
recently,
작업자들이 급속하게
we've seen
증가하면서
an
지금
increase
저희가
in remote
제공하는
workers.
이제 미팅, 근무 지원
No,
툴들이
there are
생각보다
lots
아주
of
많이
meeting,
늘어나고
work,
있습니다.
and
그래서
support tools that we are
예를 들면 이제
offering
온라인
online,
커뮤니케이션
and especially through the cloud. So, for example, there is Amazon Chime, which is a solution that offers online communication services, and there is a sort of a very complete one-stop cloud desktop environment service. As you can see here on the slide, a desktop as a service solution. Then there's also Amazon Connect, which is also noteworthy. This is a cloud-based call center service solution. If you make use of this service, call center respondents and professionals can work at home, while their supervisors and their managers can also work remotely from home to look at the call logs and the activities of these call center professionals. So this would enhance work productivity for everyone involved. At AWS, I think you would know that Amazon is headquartered in the US. We also have global conferences. Even before COVID-19, we've been very used and accustomed to using these virtual conferences and seminars, but now all of the in-house training and educational opportunities are done fully digitally. All of our meetings with clients and partners are also done through Chime. Chime is a very easy to use tool. And I think that the people here, maybe even our participants who are joining us online, might think that this is something that only a global giant can do. But I do want to illustrate a use case for a domestic player. I think this may be something that you've seen here in a Korean ad that Korean Air, a Hyundai car, came up with a PLCC credit card, a private label credit card. Of course, this credit card has been in the works before COVID-19, but after COVID-19, I can tell you that the developers, IT planners, partners, all of the different interested stakeholders were all working remotely and working from home. But of course, this was possible because the parties involved had a very flexible workplace, very flexible resources. But this is not just true of companies like Amazon. Even Korean companies, like the companies that you see here, have made use of very flexible work systems to complete projects like this. And I think that this is something that we will see much more going forward in Korea as well. Now, customer user experiences are really changing. How are companies responding to these changes? Now, this is another use case from Korean Air. Even before COVID-19, Korean Air had that strategy called Digital First. And Digital First is broadcast and covered by the media as well. So they are putting all the data on the cloud. Korean Air was focused on trying to come up with a very flexible IT infrastructure, which is the pillar of their digital first strategies. Even before COVID-19, a lot of their core systems were put in the cloud. And now, with this COVID-19 pandemic outbreak, they were very quick and agile in updating their air freight in the IT system. So they were very quick to try to understand the needs and switch between customers, passengers, and air freight capacity. In fact, they even worked together with other air freight cargo carriers and air freight cargo partners. This was all made possible through a digital-first strategy, which allowed them to work very quickly in an agile manner. And now, it's very important for people to maintain sanitation and hygienic practices. Nobody wants to touch something that other person has touched. Nobody wants to touch an in-flight entertainment system that other person has touched. So what should corporations do? They want to have a full user experience on BYOD, so bring your own device. They want to try to provide an environment where the user can just use his or her own device and not have to worry about touching other people's devices and getting their germs. This is a way for Korean Air to try to respond to this increased demand of their users, and they're trying to work on a data-driven personalization service. And when this is complete, this means that there's going to be a full personalized service from getting on board to the plane and enjoying the in-flight entertainment. Next, I want to tell you a little bit about a use case of Melia Hotel. As you know, the hotel and accommodations industry was really hard hit by COVID-19. Their revenues really plummeted. Melia Hotel worked very quickly to try to put all the data in the cloud. This actually cut down costs by about 40%. And they use Amazon Connect, as I mentioned before. That's the online cloud-based call center solution, which really helped to bring about more efficiency in their human resources management. And they did unmanned check-in system, a remote check-in process, where that people could just check in without the need for a physical key with just an ID scan or facial recognition. Next is a traditional hotel chain called Hyatt. Similar to Korean Air, even before COVID-19, Hyatt hotels had a very digital infrastructure-based strategy in place. And in fact, their revenue coming from this big database personalized recommendation service increased their total profits by about $40 million in the first half of 2019. And this big data analysis allowed them to really enhance user experience. And lastly, I want to talk about Yanolja. Yanolja has branded itself as a technology company. We think of them as a startup, but Yanolja's corporate value has really skyrocketed. For instance, they provide real-time check-in process using facial recognition technology, and they've also used blockchain-based technology to protect the safety of private and personal information of the users. They use IoT-based services to provide personalized amenities to the users, and their IoT services is also something that allows them to get data on a real-time basis. Compared to other hotels, the case of Yanolja has seen an increase in revenue by about 11%, and their total reservation rate increased on average by 7.3%. I was very quick in my presentation overview, but if I were to move to the conclusion, we have to really understand and recognize these changes in the market due to technological revolutions. And this is going to make or break the survival of a corporation. You have to be very agile in making use of digital innovations and respond in a timely manner to changes in the market. And when there are crises or disaster situations, an effective leadership can really change around a company or an organization and establish more capacity. So I think that this is something that you might already know. Even after COVID-19 passes, the demand is not just going to come back, but there's going to be an explosion of never-before-seen demands, which is why we have to try to forecast and predict the kinds of new demands that will come out. And I hope that this session has been helpful for you in that regard. I would like to close now. Thank you for your attention. Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Bang. Let's give her another big round of applause. We heard about the travel and hospitality industry. As Ms. Bang talks about air travel, hotel, accommodations industries, how they are undergoing digital transformation, what kind of achievements they've made. She's explored some use cases for us. In travel and accommodations, they are very closely related to the MICE industry, as you know, because when MICE participants go to travel to MICE events, they have to use hotel, they have to use airfare or air travel. Even in the MICE industry, we're seeing digital transformation. In the case is the KME in Germany. I think about 2 years ago, they've announced digital transformation of all of their venues. And it was Samsung SDS that won the bid to fulfill that contract. I think that in Korea as well, we're going to see more digital transformation in the domestic MICE industry, especially after COVID-19. The fact that technology is going to lead this industry going forward is a very important case for us to consider.
So our next speaker is very busy due to an increased number of virtual meetings these days. We're going to invite to this stage General Manager Cho Ik-sung from Cisco Systems. He's the Korea Collaboration Business Lead at Cisco Systems Korea. He's been involved in unified communication business for about 25 years. He's responsible for various projects and consulting. He'll be talking about hybrid office and meeting technologies. Please welcome Mr. Jo to the podium. A big round of applause is in order.
안녕하십니까. 소개받은 조익상입니다.
Hello, I am Cho Ik-sung
시간이 15분밖에 없어서
from Cisco Systems. I am only given 15 minutes, so I will move on with my presentation. So the title of my presentation is here, Hybrid Office.
그러면 그냥 라우터 스위치
So Cisco, you would think they were a big equipment company making routers and switches, but we've been in the business for about 20 years. We make servers.
회사로도 제일 큰 회사.
We're the largest company in terms of single security solutions provision. We have very interesting architectures called collaboration architectures. Smart office is a term that you are probably very well aware of, but it's really gone out of the market. We now say hybrid office. Why are we using this new term? Because of this. Now we need to understand the level of meeting technologies. Many global vendors, they will come up and they will talk about something at a very high level. So this is very good. This is what will happen in the future. But mine is going to be quite different. I'm going to be talking about some of the technologies that are available for you at an affordable price. But how we can actually apply that to our office or event places, what benefits that I can really derive by utilizing our technology. So something that is very practical.
오늘 얘기는 그냥 기술에 관한 얘기가 아니라
So I will not just be talking about technology, but how technology is bridging people and spaces and how it can actually reshape people and environment. So this is hybrid workspace or work style. So only about a year ago, we were probably not able to predict what would happen now. So these are some of the articles that we got from last year. Now the broadcasting stations, as well as large companies, they are closing down, as well as public organizations, which are known for lifelong employment. They have to shut down as well. So many people are now trying to work at companies who can provide the benefits of, for example, work from home. Many people do that, but they do that, for example, on a shift system, or they do that on a needs basis, rotational basis. We're not exactly sure why other people say others for this. So there are different ways in which remote work is provided by large companies. But before the pandemic was declared back in March, what happened? You would have to wake up in the morning. That would be the mission to be accomplished. But this is different. In order for you to come to the office, you have to get a permission in advance. So there are news about emerging vaccines on the horizon. Whether this is going to be with Corona or after Corona, we're not exactly sure. But what we know for sure at this point of time is that remote work, virtual meetings, that it's really okay. It's quite usable. So people are gaining that experience. That's really critical. So whether it's during COVID or after COVID, these technologies are here to stay. Because from the point of companies, now we understand that there are benefits to be made. So monetizing them, that's called hybrid office or hybrid work style. How can companies actually monetize this opportunity? Let's take a look at this slide here. So you're in an office room. People have different experiences with virtual meeting platforms. For example, CEOs and sales executives, they do have to, for example, meet with other people. They have to spend a lot of time on the road and also at home and also in the office. So they would be utilizing different media for communication, and they have to be kept open with external organizations. But for those people that are producing at plants or those that are managing buildings, they have to be physically there for the office, in the office. They cannot work from home. So they need to have different type of communication protocols that are needed. And you need to have a flexibility in your system that can provide exactly that. So in the post-COVID era or with COVID, office is no longer a property, of course. They will basically function as an office. But there will be people that are commuting to work, or those people that are working from home, and it will have to work. It will actually have to function as a base camp that provides a connection between people working from home and also in the office. There are people remotely working in the office and outside the office, as well as your suppliers and vendors and your customers. And all these external stakeholders will have to be connected to this one channel. And Basecamp here, hybrid office does exactly that. That provides the connectivity between and amongst the different stakeholders here. So this is the meeting technology trends that we see, and this is the type of trends that are or technologies that are available at an affordable price. There are, for example, WebEx, Zoom, MS Teams, BlueJeans. There are probably numerous systems out there in the market that you probably haven't heard. But Cisco's WebEx is a bit different because of the following features. For example, you go to, for example, Busan from Seoul, and maybe you took maybe a cow. You rode on a cattle to get there. But then now your business is getting better, and now you're trying to, for example, carry more than just one pack of rice, but maybe 10 packs of rice, and you would have to do it in a shorter period of time. So you need better technologies. Now, WebEx provides that technology for you to move upwards. For example, there are softwares or PC Mac softwares, there are different type of softwares that run on different operation systems. Now we have professional virtual meeting platforms that are delivered specifically by Cisco. Now there are these different product suites, plus these systems together with the webs here, and they can be connected to your internal equipment, the development environment, in other words. This actually covers all of the entire ecosystem. It's called WebEx that provides everything end to end. We don't call it solution. WebEx is a platform. It's an ecosystem. What is a platform? To laymen, I will just say this very simply. Now you use KakaoTalk as a chatting messenger. It seems as if just on an appearance, it's a messenger, but on top of that, there are more functions embedded. It's actually an e-commerce platform on top of chatting functions. Emoticons, as well as, for example, birthday cakes are sold there. WebEx is exactly that. So on the outside, it looks like a software, but if you take a layer inside, going deeper in, it's a platform that provides different type of communications. Let's say, for example, I want to have these functions built in. Yes, that's possible. I want to do this and that when I'm overseas. Everything's possible. It is a platform that's scalable. So what's the current status of WebEx in the global community? This is not just a statistic from last year. This is for 1 month. 592 people have used. Meeting number here, 88 million, and a total 25.9 billion minutes. That's for 1 month. What about Korea? We have an overwhelming number here as well. More than 1.1 million meetings were held. More than 9 million users there per year. So enterprise users as well as university users, they're now on WebEx platform. National Assembly meetings as well as inspections, they were held using WebEx as a platform. So in the past, WebEx provides individual meeting rooms for individual users because it's just an emulation of the physical meeting room. Why will we need to have a public meeting room? So it's better to have just your personal office space. So WebEx provides individual virtual meeting rooms for all of the employees of the organization. That is the mission here. Now Cisco has different meeting devices that it offers. From display, there's complete MNO, repair, as well as the room series here, and 4 room key series here, and Desk Pro that you can just install on the desktop. So that's mobile. And on the left, whether it is 100, 1,000, or 10,000 people, users can come in, they can upload their documents, data, and they can just exchange your ideas. It's an electronic whiteboard system, 85-inch. That's the largest one you can get here.
현존하는 미팅 시스템 중에서 가장
This is the most expensive and the most advanced panorama office platform. We don't have it here, but this is going to be implemented starting next year in earnest.
어떤 기능을 가지고 있느냐?
So what are the features that are available on the system here?
회의실에 들어가면
Now, once you go into the office room,
몇 명인지 장비가 셉니다.
now equipment can actually identify the number of users there. They can start counting. And the ID card is given to each person. For example, it's quite difficult to distinguish who is who, especially if you're working with, for example, people from Europe or America. You don't have to be confused because you'll be given an ID card. You know exactly who you're talking to, and you're given that basic information about the users. Now, the speaker is traced, and it can be traceable from different systems. For example, let's say that I'm giving a lecture. I go back and forth, and there, for example, other times where I have to take notes, and my movements and behaviors are traced automatically. And if somebody's, for example, using a mobile phone or a tablet PC, and you go into the virtual meeting room, and the equipment that is there, even if you're not there physically, exactly knows who you are and would say hello, would greet you. And then you give a voice command. For example, you say, let's start the meeting, and then the meeting will start right away on your command. You don't need a remote control. 10-inch tablet PCs are given. For example, curtains and lightings and all the control functions are fully embedded there. And per that virtual meeting, 1,000 users can be accommodated. For example, you get instructions for your CEO, Facebook Live, YouTube Live. All those features can be provided. Release, recording, that's also possible. And once you go into a meeting room for only 10 people, let's say that there are 4 users over there. Physically, you would not necessarily do that. You would be crowded in one place. Now, that specific area, that screen will be shown. We call it best overview function. Everything's possible here in the meeting room. And how can Office make use of it as a base camp? For example, sometimes you have to make a lot of investment coming up with the great interiors for the office, but some of the equipment really come up with a cheap price tag. You might think that you could just buy a webcam, but that's not necessarily so. And if you try to install that to a notebook computer, it's just not going to work very effectively. You will probably have to spend more time repairing the equipment. This is completely voice command activated. So once you just log into the virtual room, the meeting will start right away. And you install these different small virtual meeting rooms here and there. Just like you're putting your tables over there, we call it huddle room. And you say something in the middle of the room, there's a lot of noise that may go in. For example, we acquired a company called Babel Labs. That's not a noise reduction technology, but it's actually distinguishing human voice from typing and people, for example, touching papers. So you don't have to even press the mute button. You just go on, have a meeting, and all the other surrounding noises will be completely eliminated from the meeting room with this automatic function. So what can you do with this technology? What are the applications? Let's say that this is a C room in COEX, the mid-size meeting room. Most of the audience or users over here, they will go to the gym ball, and you will put a mobile technology over here. And every 5 minutes, we call it an agent. You let these part-timers go back and forth, and the buyers just give a link, and then they will just have to sign an exclusive agent, and then the agent will take the audience to the booth, and then you would have in-depth meeting. And then you go to this system, and you could have a direct one-on-one consultation with the buyer with noise reduction function, and this can be implemented. This is not something that will come up in the future. This is implementable right now.
자, 결론 한 가지만 말씀드리고 마치도록 하겠습니다.
So this is my last page, my conclusion here. So team technology, it's all about hybrid, but we do more than that. This is not enough.
재택근무를 할 때
In order for anybody to work from home, the critical element over here is to have trust and confidence in your employees. I really emphasize this point again. You may have to make sure that your employees are always working, but underlying that, there has to be trust, and you need to have the right HR system. All the management, other systems will have to adjust to that, and then you need to have a hybrid system on top of that as a layer.
가지고 있는 거를 때운다고 생각하지 말고
And this is not just a complementary function. This is a new feature that you want to introduce to your system to make yourself more competitive. And with that, I'm going to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Jo. That was a wonderful presentation. Hybrid office platform. That was a theme of your presentation. And of course, this is a hybrid event as well. We're having these offline meetings and at the same time utilizing online technologies to provide this accessibility to the online participants as well. And I think going forward as well, there will be a lot of hybrid meetings and events for the MICE industries as well. And we need to make good use of these solutions, meeting technologies. So thank you very much for that presentation.
네, 오늘 마지막 발표는 마이스 벤처 기업
We'll now move on to our last presentation, which is from a venture company. Because of COVID-19, many companies have either been postponed or even canceled. Some of them have shifted to online or gone hybrid. We'd like to hear from Ha Min-jae, who's going to talk about online exhibitions. Ha Min-jae works at Samsung Engineering, project developer, project planner of software development, and is now the founder of OPENBOOTH, receiving support from the Ministry of SMEs. We'd like to hear about online exhibitions, beginning of new experiences by Ha Min-jae.
네, 안녕하세요. 온라인 박람회 새로운
Hello,
경험의
I want to
시작이라는
talk about online exhibitions, beginning of new experiences. My name is Ha Min-jae. I'm the founder and CEO of OPENBOOTH. Let me just start out by briefly telling you a little bit about OPENBOOTH, our company.
박람회 개최 가능한 구축
We
플랫폼과
try to provide platforms for online exhibitions and operational services for an integrated, a one-stop solution for the hosting of online exhibitions. Before COVID-19, since 2019, we've been hosting online exhibitions. We've done about 14 so far, with about 25,000 participants, and which led to about 128 other contacts. This has led to a very quick and easy and efficient and professional hosting of online exhibitions. We have been a professional service provider.
다양한 온라인 박람회를 수행을 하면서
We have hosted various different kinds of online exhibitions, and we feel that the exhibition industry is going through rapid transformations.
온라인 박람회 형태가
Because there's so many different kinds of online exhibitions, we wanted to understand what kind of user experiences we want to provide for online exhibitions to become more than a fad and really become a culture. And we wanted to understand what kind of user experiences are the most important. With that in mind, I would like to explain what we feel are the most important. We feel that exhibitions is in and of themselves a sort of content where people and people can meet, and it is also a form of culture in that regard. We feel that exhibitions are a kind of culture because there are these different individual experiences made by the user. You go to the exhibitions, you go to the different booths to get information, but you also participate in seminars, you meet new people, you make new friends, you meet your colleagues, have coffee in the breakout rooms, all of these different opportunities and experiences. These experiences all come together to shape one kind of culture, which is why we feel that with online exhibitions as well, they should also provide that level of value, that level of experience that you find with offline exhibitions, which is why we feel that an online exhibition is something like a content container And we want the online exhibition to try to provide more context and more content and try to provide different routes for participation, different channels of participation. How can we optimize this level of participation? We think that 3 elements are very important. First is the quality of the content. Second, to make it user-friendly. And thirdly, we want to understand non-verbal signs because this will lead to indirect communication. I'd like to go to each in turn. With content quality, obviously, this is going to be very important because this is a key element that drives user experience. For the best exhibitions, they have quality content which can generate user experience and user participation. So that is a kind of cycle that we could think of. And let me move on to a use case. So this screen that you see here is a booth, an online virtual booth of one of the participating vendors in an online exhibition that we hosted. Some of the more quality booths and vendors really invested in their content, and this was able to generate user participation and user experiences. So this was a very successful use case. Secondly, we want to try to provide user-friendly environment. We want to make user learning decrease as much as we can. So let me try to make this a little bit easier to understand. This map that you see right now is the subway map for the city of Seoul. But as you can see, it's very complicated. But this map is a little bit more streamlined, much easier for you to take in. I feel that for online exhibitions, online expos, the participants who come to the online expos are like tourists who are going to a tourist destination for the very first time of their lives. And if you were to give them a very complicated traffic map, then they would not have fun. They would likely go to somewhere else. The online sphere brings limitless freedom, which is why we want to make it very comfortable with ease of use and user-friendly. And that would allow for most optimized user experience. Lastly is nonverbal signs. When it comes to communication among people, rather than verbal elements, these indirect nonverbal elements actually are more helpful in allowing people to understand the intent and the meaning of the other person. I think that with online expos as well, this is true. For online expos, there's the main content, and this main content is typically delivered to the users. However, as you know, in the online space, we are also involved in many different other kinds of activities. These different activities are turned into information and then turned into indirect content, which can provide more data to the users to make their decisions. So if we can make that all possible, then I think that we can provide more participatory, experiential sort of element to the users. However, there are technical challenges. For the organizers who lead these online expos, they have to have a very good understanding of technology. It's very difficult to find organizers with a very high level of digital literacy. This flowchart that you see here is a user flow of functions of certain systems. It only shows one part. I don't think that the organizer has to necessarily understand every single element in this flowchart, and that's also not realistic. To host one online expo, we have to do development and also the hosting. I think that the development aspect and the hosting aspect have to be completely separated. The organizer should focus only on hosting and the content, because the online expo is itself a form of content. Let me provide another use case for you. This is an online expo also hosted by us, and the organizer of this expo was the Korea Library Association. It's a library culture expo. And as you can see, it took about a month to produce, and it had 20 different expos and seminars. There are about 2,400 paid participants, we feel that the ROI for the organizer was over 70%.
초창기 프로젝트를 진행할 때부터
For the organizers,
개최와 개발은 분리해서 생각을
they
하고
have
개최
begun
적인
this
분야에
project by
집중해달라는
sort of
말씀을 드렸고 결국은
having
개최로
a
이어질 수
splitting
있었습니다.
off between hosting and development. So they entrusted us with the development aspects and they focused on the content and on hosting the actual expo. We're now going back to square one and asking ourselves the question whether the online space can really replace offline. I feel that hybrid expos and hybrid meetings in particular have already begun. In the past, online meetings and online expos were a supplement to the offline expos, but now they are overtaking their role and leading to hundreds worth of value generation for the users and the organizers as well.
저희가 2019년에 저희
In
박람회 개최를
2019,
준비할 때
when we were
제가 직접 한
preparing
통에
for our
전화를
online
받았습니다.
expo, I received a phone call
원거리에 있는 지역의 분이셨고
from someone who was living far away, and this person was a little bit physically challenged. And this person on the phone call told me that now that the expo is going to be online, maybe I can participate as well. Maybe I can go to the online expo. That's when I realized that with technology becoming more diverse and more advanced, it is being applied to many different industries, but at the end, it really comes down to people. I think with expos and seminars, they're becoming more hybrid in nature, but their ultimate direction has to come to people, which means that they have to be more open-ended and participatory in nature. With that, I would like to conclude my presentation. This is OpenBooth. Thank you very much, Mr. Ha Min-jae, for your presentation. You told us about online expos and online exhibitions. Because many of these seminars and expos have been cancelled, there have been discussions about moving this to the online space. I am also participating in an online expo operation task force. However, with the online expos, many vendors, participating vendors, they wonder whether this is going to be effective. Is digital marketing is going to be really effective using online expos? So there is a little bit of controversy, but as Mr. Ha said, online is not something that is just being a supplement to offline. It's not an afterthought. In some cases, online expos are going to overtake the importance of offline expos, and they're going to be more important going forward, which is what we're going to see in the future. So we've just heard from 3 speakers. We do have one panelist that I was not able to introduce.
So to my very far right, we have Taek Kim, CEO from COMEXPlanS. Yes, thank you for that applause. So we've just heard from our 3 speakers, and we're going to start our Q&A. Now, all of the speakers have spoken about very meaningful subjects here. Ms. Pang talked about the digital transformation for travel and hospitality industries and how that transformation is taking place. And Brandon Zhou talked about hybrid solutions. Now, Cisco Systems is a B2B solutions provider, world-renowned. Of course, many businesses and companies, they would have many internal meetings, and we just saw the overwhelming number of internal meetings that are being held using the systems here. And Mr. Han also talked about the virtual events. So digital transformation, hybrid solutions, and online solutions. These are the 3 key topics that we have dealt with the 3 speakers. But before we move on to the Q&A, I'm going to ask Mr. Taek Kim from COMEXPlanS to give his comments and thoughts as well. So what are your thoughts after hearing from the 3 speakers over here? Do you have any questions for them? Do you have any comments to make? And perhaps we can get responses from the speakers at the same time. Thank you. I'm Kim Taek from COMEXPlanS. All the 3 speakers have underscored the importance of the user experience UX, which I completely agree, because in the online space and hybrid space, for them to be successful, you would have to have good access and lower barriers to entry, which would lead to the promotion of these industries. For example, Netflix, Watcha, or YouTube. These are platforms that are very much loved by younger generations because their personal preferences are reflected through curation, functions, and using AI algorithms. Their preferences, their needs and wants are pretty much reflected, maybe perhaps not to the fullest. So their personalized recommendations, in a way, could be an attractive option for them. And Hiran Park and Brandon, Joe, both of you talked about the meeting technologies, and I really like them. They're very useful, and I really agree with you. But they're mostly designed for large companies or facilities that really have the right infrastructure. I think more can be gained by the large businesses compared to smaller businesses. So how can we just general users in this industry make better use of the technologies, especially in terms of affordability or usability? How can we have a better access to these technologies, more universal access to them? Mr. Bang, Brandon, could you respond to that question first?
I think that was a very broad question. I think that these online virtual seminar or conference systems are really being deployed at a large scale with big corporations. But with these global giants or big corporations, if you take a look at their organizational culture, they really have to change around that culture. As I mentioned before, we have talked about remote work or with these virtual conferences and virtual meetings. These companies also have to consider what they can do to try to increase the level of worker efficiency, which is why I think that there is a lot of possibilities for startups. If I were to just put it briefly, if we were to take a look at the travel space, the travel industry was really hard hit by COVID-19. However, if we take it around, I think that people are redefining travel. So for instance, for the younger generation, they are looking at travel in a whole new way, which is why we're seeing AR, VR startups moving into this space. This need to travel will never go away. People are still going to want to go to travel, which is what I mentioned in my presentation, that this demand is not going away. In fact, we're going to see new demand after COVID-19. So rather than big companies, maybe startups or smaller, more agile companies can be more flexible in trying to adapt to these changes and applying these new technologies. Even within AWS, we're trying to do our best to do that. In fact, we have programs to support SMEs. So maybe these SMEs or startups can work together with big corporations to try to apply new technologies, and that could lead to new opportunities as well.
So thank you for that, Brandon.
잘 들리세요? 네. 일단
Okay.
포춘 500대 기업의 95%.
So 95% of Fortune 500 companies have adopted WebEx as their official infrastructure. These are the large companies. But we have an academy programs that are used by large universities such as Dongguk University, that was the first user, and the second, Hongik universities as well. We have a commitment not to disclose any numbers, but we don't really charge them. But it is just that they don't really have to spend that much money, of course, just for using our technologies. But for other smaller companies or MICE industries, maybe there are other ways that they can utilize our technologies, because we understand that we have been coming under a lot of criticism for that high price tag. And it's called Flex 3.0. That's a different pricing scheme, which was launched recently. We've just finished our partner training. Many people say that they use Zoom because it's cheap, but our solution is going to be cheaper than that. It comes as a result of our solar reflection. And for some of the equipment, for example, 55-inch annotation enable which is used quite extensively by universities. They're quite expensive, more than 10 million Korean won. So the low-cost codecs and Flip 2, that's a highly advanced electronic whiteboards provided by Samsung Electronics. We're trying to combine these two technologies. We came up with something very affordable for the users. So Cisco is trying to come up with a more reasonable and accessible pricing scheme for WebEx and other solutions. And this is not just applicable to us because we're trying to promote this positive competition in the market. And we're trying to lead the way by coming up with a reasonable pricing scheme. So I think it's going to come down even further. Thank you.
Yes, very much. Mr. Kim, do you have any questions for Mr. Ha? So while we're waiting, I would like to ask a question from my end. We've been talking about hybrid and online expos, or travel, hospitality, industry, all these digital transformation journeys in this space. I think that here, basically, we are talking about meeting technology. With meeting technology, if we make use of this, what is the expected outcome? Because earlier on we were talking about user experience. When we're making use of technology, let's say if this were an offline space versus an online space, can the online space deliver as much value as an offline space would? So if you were to think of a performance or a concert, it's very different being there physically in real life versus just watching it on a screen. And so we don't think that the virtual or hybrid meetings or conferences are going to completely replace face-to-face. However, right now, because of COVID-19, we cannot do these face-to-face meetings, which is why we are trying to make use of meeting technology or different digital strategies to try to overcome these current challenges. Right now, because of the travel ban, we are not able to bring in overseas or international guests or international vendors. So then this begs the question, are we going to just keep our expo small scale? Or are we going to turn to technology to try to invite overseas participants? Because even with our guests today from overseas, if we did not have technology, they would not have been able to join us at all. But with technology, they still were able to present to us, and we still had a digital Q&A. So in this current space, when there are these constraints because of COVID-19, digital technology has allowed us to try to overcome these different challenges to a certain extent. So even after COVID-19 goes away, as Mr. Cho mentioned early on, are we going to go back to the past when we've already had these digital experiences? So this is going to be the challenge going forward. This is for us going forward instead of going back into a new era, which is why we're going to see more hybrid events. And the hybrid model is going to be the most paramount model going forward, which is why for the MICE industry, the biggest question was for us to try to host as many meetings as possible, to bring in as many participants as possible. So that was really just what we were focusing on. But now we have to wonder what format and what style we want to host and organize the meeting and the expo. The meeting technologies are really led by North America and Europe. They are early adopters. Before COVID-19, I think that in the case of Korea, we were latecomers in technology adoption. However, because of COVID-19, we were really accelerating this pace, which is what we've heard from these three presenters. So I would also like to ask a brief question in that regard. Making use of this technology can be a way for us to identify new growth opportunities for the MICE industry. I think that that's going to be a very key issue. If you look at the elements of the MICE industry, there are the organizers and the convention center, so the venue, and the PCOs, or the event planners, and then these different equipment vendors, the service contractors, and there are all these related industries, so travel, hospitality, F&B. These different industries are all related to this field. If we consider this element of the MICE industry, Ms. Bang mentioned earlier that Korean Air is going through digital transformation. You talked about the hotel chains. So in that regard, the MICE industry would also have to go through digital transformation or digitalization. So we have to have that level of interest and appreciation. And this digital transformation can allow us to identify a new growth engine going forward for the MICE industry. The hybrid solution or technology digital transformation that we're seeing in other industries, how can that take place in the MICE industry? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Fully agree with that. Why you're asking the question, because we're combining technology and MICE industry together, or marrying the two. If we just use the current technologies, we will not be able to cover the full scope of the MICE industry. There are limitations in achieving that. That's for true because, for example, there are different senses. You smell the air, for example, you see. All these different things that you want to do or you can do physically cannot be fully covered. You can only listen maybe and see with the current technologies. And how can we actually overcome those limitations? That would be the quickest solution that we can come up with for now. There are AV, for example, criteria. The standards right now, it's 4K and 8K. I'm wearing glasses myself. Now, if you look at the 8K display very up close and personal, it's very clear rather than actually you being there in front of the screen. And what about hearing? Rather than just using your... Well, it's better to listen through the filter sound, which is enabled by the technologies, but it's different for you to smell and taste. That's not available with the current technologies. And as I said before in the presentation, if you want to maximize the physical experience, it's VR. They can provide that. A lot of meeting technology, for example, the companies are using that to create revenue, but they can't really use this technology now. Let's say that your CEO will not want to put on the goggles for the meeting room, so that's just not fit for the today's world. But that is possible for the MICE industry, not for the meeting environment. So there are these different meeting technologies that are currently being developed in the laboratory, and those meeting technologies are currently being applied in the industry. So rather than trying to import them directly, we would have to come up with the customized meeting technology specifically fit for the MICE industry, and I'm sure that it's possible. We don't really have a lot of time, and I won't be able to give you more details than this. And I know that there's a lot of R&D underway right now as we speak. And I hope that we could have another opportunity in the future to have a more in-depth discussion on this. Well, in the case of Korea, well, actually overseas, the meeting technologies have been around for quite a long time. I think about 30 years, if we look back at the history. But now we're only just beginning to take some interest in the meeting technology. So I think we're in that nascent stage of development. Technology really hasn't been part of a big equation for the MICE industry up until now. And I think there's going to be a lot of evolution, a lot of progress, and that is really going to deliver a lot of benefits to the MICE industry. What about Ms. Bang?
I think that if you take a look at what you see nowadays, technology is important, but content has become even more important. We see a lot of online lectures and online classes. Even my children are taking their classes online. So in the past, all we try to do was to try to find the best lecturer, the best teacher, and go there. But now we feel that if the content is good, it doesn't really matter who delivers the content because the content itself is so high quality. We try to make use of video conferencing solutions to meet with different clients and different global partners. They really focus on content. I think that before, if you're just meeting in person, you try to maybe exhibit your charm, and that could gloss over some of the content. But nowadays, it's all about content. It's about the story that you want to communicate, which is why the visual element is also very important. So when we have meetings, you know how in the backdrop it's going to change all the time. So sometimes you would show your room or your study or your bedroom, but now because the meeting technology has become so advanced, you can change around the backdrop behind you. You can change the background color. You can make it look as if you're working at a beach somewhere. And I think that that is a sort of a visualization strategy that many people are turning to. So I think going forward, it's all going to come down to content. And I think that AR, VR is going to be very important in the future, especially in the travel sector that I'm working in, that even if you don't want to travel somewhere, maybe you can still use AR, VR to have that level of experience. In fact, at AWS, we are trying to think about those different projects because, as I mentioned before, people still want to go travel. They want to go on trips, but content can be the solution. Air New Zealand is also already presenting an AR, VR technology solution. People can decide where they want to go. They can select a destination, and they can even have that in-flight experience as well. So with AR, VR, digital technology, plus the content, that integrated service is going to appeal to many different users in a post-COVID world. That's going to lead to more opportunities in a niche market because there's going to be that new demand.
So thank you. So content is the king. Fully agree with that, 100%. If you look abroad, if there are any issues in terms of meeting technologies or technologies, people say content is the king. That's the most critical element here. So in the online world, how to deliver digital contents, we have to just focus on one thing. It's all about customers and the audience, and they're enhancing and maximizing their experience with the event. And I have a question to Mr. Hall, relation to the online exhibitions. There actually is a lot of controversies or a lot of debates, I should say, at a task force that I'm working in. For example, there's also a member from Samsung Electronics, IFA, that's a Berlin Consumer Electronics exhibition. They took part in that online event, but it really was not memorable at all. So people were saying that the exhibition, the online exhibition, was not effective as well. So they displayed their products, demonstrated the products, and they had a meeting with the buyers over there. But maybe because the participants are not really familiar with this format, and the whole event proved not to be really effective. So for the online exhibitors, in order to utilize the online experience or platforms, what do we need to do?
Yes, thank you very much for pointing out something very important. I just want to add to what I've already mentioned in my presentation. I think that online expos and online technologies is not going to completely replace the existing MICE format. It's just going to expand the spectrum of MICE events and MICE expos. So for the actual ratio of the people who participate in these expos are only 2% of the total population. This means that 98% of the population are not able to come to these expos for various reasons, and that's what we think is untapped territory, which is why I think that we are trying to market to people who want to come to these expos, but for some reason physically cannot, which is why we've provided this online expo solution. In 2019, for one booth, there are about 6 or 7 counts of consultations, but on our online exhibition, it was about 5.4 consultations per booth, which is very similar to offline expos. And when we asked the vendors who participated already, about 38% of them said that they are willing to participate in the next year's online expo. So it was very meaningful and some of the content. There was one vendor that had a lot of R&D, a lot of technological components, but maybe they were not very savvy when it comes to R&D. But there was an American buyer who saw this vendor, and in the online space, they continue their communications, and there was a high level of engagement. They had a very high level of satisfaction. So I don't think that the mice industry should only look inward and look at the existing market and existing participants. I think the best way for us is to try to broaden our perspective.
So thank you for that response. So online exhibitions here could actually provide that opportunity for expanding into the offline area as well. In the interest of time, we will have to conclude the session here. It was a very brief session. Nonetheless, it has been very useful and impactful. With that, I'm going to conclude the session, thanking all the speakers here as well as our panelists. Thank you very much. We're going to be concluding this session on meeting technologies, changing the future and the present of the mice industry. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the moderator as well as the speakers and the panelists for your active participation. We just concluded the second session on the future of the mice industry. We were able to learn about new meeting technologies, very innovative and new. We will be working together to shape the mice industry going forward. If you go to the Expo homepage, there's an exhibition zone as well as a pitching zone that provides a lot of information about these new emerging technologies. So we just finished our first session as well as the second session of Korean Mice Expo. The third session will begin at 2 o'clock, Seongdo Conventia. And of course, it is open to the online participants as well through live streaming service. We ask for your continued participation and interest. Thank you very much. We'll see you again tomorrow. Thank you.